The candles flickered in the vast throne room of Castle Abendroth, their flames dancing against the ancient stone walls like restless spirits. Outside, a perpetual twilight bathed the kingdom of Noctoria in hues of purple and crimson. For true daylight had not blessed this realm in 7 centuries. Prince Valerian watched from the dais as nobility in their finery circulated below, their pale faces aglow with the unnatural beauty that marked their kind. "They're like vultures in silk," murmured a voice beside him, circling and smiling, always watching for weakness. Valerian turned to his twin brother, Lucian, who sat upon an identical obsidian throne. Where Valerian's hair fell in waves of midnight black, Lucian's was white as bone, a quirk of birth that had marked them as special even among the royal bloodline. Their faces bore the same sharp angles, the same full lips and high cheekbones, perfect mirrors, save for their coloring and the subtle differences in their expressions. Where Lucian's mouth often curled with sardonic amusement, Valerian's remained a solemn line. "You see treachery everywhere, brother," Valerian replied, his voice velvet soft. "Some are merely enjoying the equinox ball." Lucien snorted, idly twirling a goblet of crimson liquid between his fingers. "Enjoying the opportunity to curry favor, you mean? How many proposals of marriage have you received tonight? 4, 5, 7, Valerian admitted with a wince. The noble houses had grown increasingly bold since the twins' coronation 3 months prior. 7 centuries ago, their ancestor Alaric the Blood-Crowned had established the tradition of dual rule. Twins born to the royal line would share the throne equally, their complementary natures ensuring balanced governance. It was said to be the perfect system, where one prince might falter, the other would remain strong. Yet it also created a unique problem. Which prince would continue the bloodline? Lady Elisabetta of House Corvus was quite persistent, Valerian continued, nodding toward a raven-haired beauty in burgundy silk who kept glancing in their direction. "She offered me a chalice of blood from her own wrist." "How quaint," Lucian drawled. "She offered me the same last month." His eyes, crimson-flecked silver, narrowed mischievously. "Though I suspect her father put her up to approaching us both. House Corvus has always been ambitious." A hush fell over the gathering as the great doors at the far end of the hall swung open. The master of ceremonies struck his staff against the marble floor 3 times, the sound reverberating through the cavernous space. "Her Excellency, Lady Marana Nightshade, emissary of the Eastern Territories." The crowd parted like a dark sea as a woman glided forward. She wore a gown of midnight blue that seemed to absorb the candlelight around her. Her skin was alabaster pale, her eyes the deep green of forest shadows, but most striking was her hair, a cascade of auburn that caught the light like liquid copper, falling in waves to her waist. Among a court of predominantly raven-haired and platinum-blonde vampires, she was a flame in darkness. Valerian felt his breath catch. Beside him, Lucian sat straighter, his previous languor vanishing in an instant. Lady Marana approached the dais and sank into a graceful curtsy. "Your Highnesses," she said, her voice like smoke and honey, "I bring greetings from Lord Drakon of the Eastern Territories." "Rise, Lady Nightshade," Valerian said, surprised to find his voice steady. "Noctoria welcomes you." As she rose, her eyes met his, and Valerian felt a jolt of something. Not the hunger of the bloodthirst, but something equally primal. Her gaze shifted to Lucian, and Valerian saw his brother's lips part slightly, a rare display of being caught off guard. "The East has kept to itself these past decades," Lucian observed, recovering quickly. "What brings its emissary to our court?" "Change blows on the wind, Your Highness," she replied. "The old treaties are fraying at the edges. Lord Drakon believes it is time to renew our ancient bonds." "And does Lord Drakon send beautiful emissaries to all his allies?" Lucian asked, a dangerous edge beneath his charm. Marana's smile revealed the delicate points of her fangs. "Only to those he truly wishes to impress." Something cold slithered down Valerian's spine. Lord Draken was notorious for his ambition and cunning. The Eastern Territories had once been part of Noctoria before a bloody rebellion 2 centuries ago had resulted in an uneasy peace and recognized autonomy for the East. "We shall speak more of treaties tomorrow," Valerian declared. "Tonight is for celebration. Lady Nightshade, you must be weary from your journey. I've arranged for chambers in the East Wing." "Most gracious, Your Highness," she said, her eyes lingering on his. "Though I am hardly weary, our kind thrives in darkness, does it not?" "Indeed," Lucian interjected. "Perhaps you'll honor me with a dance, my lady?" He extended his hand, rising from his throne with fluid grace. Valerian felt a surge of, what? Protectiveness? Possessiveness? He had no claim on this woman he'd just met, yet watching his brother escort her to the dance floor stirred something ancient and territorial within him. He watched as they moved among the other dancers, Lucian's white hair stark against Morana's auburn waves. They made a striking pair, their movements preternaturally graceful. When Lucian whispered something that made her laugh, Valerian found his hands gripping the armrests of his throne. "Trouble in paradise." Valerian turned to see Elias Bloodworth, royal advisor and their father's oldest friend, approaching the dais. The elder vampire's eyes, faded to a pale pink after millennia of existence, missed nothing. "Merely contemplating diplomatic matters," Valerian replied smoothly. "Ah, yes. The diplomatic matter of an enchanting emissary who has captured the attention of both princes." Elias's thin lips curved into a knowing smile. "History has an unsettling way of repeating itself." Valerian frowned. "What do you mean?" Elias gave him a measured look. "The court records speak of similar tensions during your grandfather's reign. Twin princes, a foreign beauty, whispers of alliances. It ended rather poorly, if you recall your history." Valerian did recall. His grandfather and granduncle had shared the throne peacefully until a noble woman from the southern kingdoms arrived. Their competition for her affection had spiraled into resentment, then hatred, culminating in a duel that left his granduncle dead and his grandfather half mad with grief. "That was different," Valerian said firmly. "We are not our ancestors." "Of course not," Elias conceded with a slight bow. "You and Prince Lucien have always been exceptionally close. I merely advise caution. Eastern emissaries rarely bring simple tidings." As Elias drifted away, Valerian returned his attention to the dance floor. The music had changed to something slower, more intimate. Lucien held Morana closer now, his hand splayed possessively against the small of her back. As they turned, Morana's eyes met Valerian's across the room. She held his gaze even as she danced in his brother's arms, a silent communication that sent heat coursing through his veins. When the dance ended, Lucian led her back toward the dais, but they were intercepted by Lady Elisabetta. Valerian watched as his brother stiffened, clearly annoyed at the interruption. Taking advantage of the moment, Valerian descended from the dais and approached. "Lady Nightshade," he said with a slight bow, "I believe this next dance belongs to me." She turned, those forest green eyes lighting with interest. "Does it? I don't recall promising it to you." "Consider it a royal request, then." A smile played at her lips. "How can I refuse?" As he led her to the center of the floor, Valerian felt Lucien's eyes burning into his back. The orchestra struck up a waltz, dark and sweeping. "Your brother is quite charming," Morana observed as they began to move with the music. "Lucien has always had a way with words," Valerian acknowledged. "I'm considered the more reserved twin." "Reserved doesn't mean uninteresting, Your Highness." Her hand was cool in his, her waist firm beneath his palm. "Sometimes still waters run deeper than babbling brooks." "And what waters run beneath your surface, Lady Nightshade? You speak of treaties and alliances, yet your arrival was unannounced." Something shifted in her eyes. Caution, perhaps. Lord Draken felt that discretion was prudent. "There are forces at work that would prefer our kingdoms remain at odds." "What forces?" She moved closer as they turned, her lips near his ear. The human realms are growing restless. Their weapons evolve while we cling to ancient ways. They've begun hunting our kind in the borderlands. Valerian tensed. The peace between vampires and humans had always been fragile, built on separation and careful treaties that kept their worlds apart. Here we've heard no such reports. The Eastern Territories border the human lands more closely than Noctoria. We've lost 3 noble houses in the past year alone. Her voice had lost its seductive edge, replaced by a hardness that spoke of personal loss. Lord Draken believes we must stand united if we are to survive what's coming. The music swelled around them, masking their conversation from prying ears. "And what does unity look like to Lord Draken?" Valerian asked quietly. Morana's eyes met his, direct and unblinking. "A marriage alliance between Noctoria and the East." The implication struck Valerian like a physical blow. "Between you and either prince would satisfy the terms," she said carefully. "Lord Draken has granted me the authority to assess the situation and make a recommendation." Anger flashed through Valerian. "So you're to choose between us, like prized stallions at auction?" Her grip on his hand tightened. "I am to forge an alliance that will save both our peoples. The specifics are secondary. And if neither of us wishes to be part of this arrangement, then the East will seek other allies." Something cold entered her voice. "Perhaps among those who would see Noctoria fall." The music ended, and they stood still as other couples moved around them. Valerian was acutely aware of Lucian watching from nearby, his expression unreadable. "You play a dangerous game, Lady Nightshade," Valerian murmured. "It is no game, Your Highness." She stepped back and curtsied. "It is survival." She turned and walked away, leaving Valerian standing alone in the middle of the ballroom floor. Within moments, Lucian was at his side. "What did she say to you?" his brother demanded, his usual composure fracturing. "Nothing she hasn't likely told you as well," Valerian replied evenly. "She speaks of alliances through marriage." Lucian's eyes narrowed. "Marriage to whom? That, it seems, is for her to decide." Valerian couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. "Either of us would suffice for Lord Draken's purposes." A flash of something primeval crossed Lucian's face. Possession, hunger, determination. "She's not some treaty token to be passed between courts." "No," Valerian agreed, surprised by the vehemence in his brother's voice and the answering surge within himself. "She's not." Their eyes met, and for the first time in their existence, Valerian saw his brother as a rival. The realization was as shocking as it was undeniable. Later that night, as the ball wound down and nobility began to depart, Valerian stood on the balcony overlooking the vast forests that surrounded Castle Abendrot. The eternal twilight of Noctoria cast long shadows across the land, and in the distance the eastern mountains loomed like slumbering giants. "You're troubled." He didn't turn at the sound of Morana's voice. "You've brought trouble to my door, Lady Nightshade. Did you expect me to be at ease?" She moved beside him, her scent, night-blooming flowers and something metallic like blood, enveloping him. "I brought reality to your door. The world is changing, Valerian. Noctoria cannot remain isolated if it wishes to survive. The use of his name without title was presumptuous and thrilling. And you believe marriage is the answer? I believe connection is the answer." She turned to him, her face solemn. "Your brother understands this." Something cold clutched at Valerian's heart. "What do you mean?" "He's already accepted the possibility. He sees the strategic value." "Lucienne has always been impulsive," Valerian said, trying to ignore the jealousy clawing at his insides. "Is it impulsive to recognize necessity?" Morana asked. "The Eastern Territories need Noctoria's strength. Noctoria needs our intelligence network and proximity to human lands." "And what do you need, Morana?" Valerian asked, turning to face her fully. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "What I need is irrelevant." "I don't believe that." He stepped closer. "What do you want?" Their eyes locked, and in hers he saw conflict, desire, and something like fear. But before she could answer, the balcony doors opened behind them. "Interrupting, am I?" Lucian's voice was light, but his eyes were hard as he surveyed them. "The council is asking for us, Val. Something about border patrols." Morana stepped back. "I should retire. Dawn approaches, and I've matters to attend to." She slipped past Lucienne, who didn't move from the doorway, forcing her to brush against him as she passed. Valerian watched his brother's eyes follow her, naked hunger in his gaze. When she was gone, Lucienne turned back to him. "She's extraordinary. She's dangerous," Valerian countered. "The most desirable things usually are." Lucienne smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't look so troubled, brother. Haven't we always shared everything? This is different." "Is it?" Lucian stepped onto the balcony. "We share a throne, share the burden of rule. Why not share the pleasure of her company while she's here?" The casual suggestion sent a wave of possessive rage through Valerian. "She's not a goblet of blood to be passed between us." "Of course not. She's far more intoxicating." Lucian's smile faded. "I saw how you looked at her, Val. I've never seen you so affected. I could say the same of you." A tense silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken claims and ancient instincts that predated their civilized veneer. For vampires, desire and hunger were inextricably linked, and both burned in Valerian's veins when he thought of Morana. "The council can wait until tomorrow," Valerian finally said. "I need to hunt." Lucian nodded, understanding his brother's need to clear his head. "Don't venture beyond the western woods. There have been reports of human scouts." Valerian nodded curtly and moved past his brother. As he reached the door, Lucian called after him. "Val, we've ruled together in perfect harmony for 3 centuries. No woman will change that, not even her." Valerian paused but didn't turn. "Are you trying to convince me, brother? Or yourself?" He left without waiting for an answer, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Behind him, alone on the balcony, Lucian's eyes gleamed red in the darkness as he whispered to the night, "Perhaps both, brother. Perhaps both." Part 2. Valerian moved through the ancient forest with preternatural speed, the trees blurring around him as he ran. The hunt usually cleared his mind, but tonight his thoughts remained turbulent. Every shadow seemed to take on Morana's silhouette. Every rustle of leaves whispered her name. He paused at the edge of a clearing, inhaling deeply. The scent of deer hung in the air, sustenance but hardly satisfying. The royal twins, like most noble vampires, primarily drank from willing human servants or preserved blood. Hunting animals was merely a way to exercise their predatory instincts. He spotted his prey across the clearing, a stag with impressive antlers, its head raised in sudden awareness of danger. In a blur of movement, Valerian was upon it, his fangs sinking into the creature's neck. The blood was hot but thin, lacking the complexities of human blood. Still, the act of hunting, of feeling life drain away beneath his touch, helped center him. As he fed, a memory surfaced. Lucienne and him as young princes, hunting together under their father's watchful eye. How simple things had been then. They had been inseparable, 2 halves of a perfect whole. Now for the first time, Valerian felt the chasm of difference between them. Lucienne's words echoed in his mind. "Haven't we always shared everything?" Valerian released the stag's lifeless body, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Not this," he whispered to the night. "Not her." A twig snapped behind him. Valerian whirled, instinctively dropping into a defensive crouch. A figure stepped out from behind an ancient oak. A tall man with copper-red hair pulled back in a tight braid, his angular face marked with ritual scars that identified him as Eastern nobility. "Prince Valerian," the man acknowledged with a slight bow. "Forgive the intrusion on your hunt." "You're from the Eastern Territories," Valerian said, straightening. "Part of Lady Nightshade's entourage?" "Cain Bloodmane, Lady Morana's personal guard and cousin." His accent was thicker than Morana's, his consonants harder. "I've been tasked with ensuring her safety while in Noctoria." "She faces no threats here," Valerian said, bristling at the implication. Kane's scarred lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "Threats exist everywhere, Your Highness, especially where politics and desire intermingle." Valerian narrowed his eyes. "Speak plainly, Bloodmane. Lady Morana's mission is of vital importance to the East. She was chosen not only for her diplomatic skill, but for her particular appeal." Kane circled slowly, his movements casual, but his eyes alert. "Lord Draken anticipated the reaction she would provoke in you and your brother. We're not pawns to be manipulated by Eastern schemes," Valerian growled. "Everyone is a pawn in someone's game, Prince Valerian. The question is whether you're moving forward or being sacrificed." Kane stopped, his red eyes glinting in the dim light. "My cousin has genuine respect for you, perhaps more than is prudent. I would hate to see her caught between twin princes whose rivalry could destroy everything we're working toward. You presume much about my relationship with my brother." "Do I?" Kane raised an eyebrow. "The servants already whisper about the tension between you. How Prince Lucien retired to his chambers in a dark mood. How you fled the castle to hunt alone, something you rarely do." Valerian clenched his jaw. Court gossip traveled faster than he'd anticipated. "What exactly is your concern, Bloodmane?" "My concern is that Lord Draken needs this alliance. The humans grow bolder with each passing season. Their weapons can turn our kind to ash from a distance. Their numbers overwhelm us." Genuine fear flickered across Kane's face. "My family's estate was the first to fall. I watched my parents and siblings burn in daylight when humans breached our defenses." Something in Valerian softened. "I'm sorry for your loss. I don't want your pity, Prince. I want your commitment." Kane stepped closer. "Lady Morana must return with a marriage contract. The future of our kind depends on it. And if she fails..." A shadow passed over Kane's features. "Then Lord Draken will pursue other avenues of protection. He's already received overtures from the Lycan dominions." Valerian stiffened. The werewolves had been ancient enemies of vampire kind since time immemorial. An alliance between the Eastern territories and the Lycans would upset the balance of power throughout the supernatural realms. "That would be unwise," Valerian said carefully. "Desperation breeds unwise decisions, Your Highness." Kyan bowed again, deeper this time. "I've said more than I should. Lady Morana would be displeased to know I approached you. But I served the East first, and my cousin second." With that, he melted back into the shadows, leaving Valerian alone with the cooling carcass of the stag and thoughts more turbulent than before. Morana stood by the window in her chambers, watching the ever-present twilight that shrouded Noctoria. The room was luxurious, all dark wood and burgundy velvet, but it felt like a beautiful cage. The weight of her mission pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called, expecting her handmaiden. Instead, Prince Lucien sauntered in, a bottle of what appeared to be ancient vintage blood wine in one hand, 2 crystal glasses in the other. "I thought you might appreciate a proper welcome gift," he said, his smile disarming. "The servants' accommodations can be so impersonal." "These are hardly servants' accommodations," Morana replied, gesturing to the opulent room. "And it's highly improper for you to be here unchaperoned. Impropriety is my specialty." Lucian set the glasses down on a small table and began to uncork the bottle. "Besides, aren't you here to evaluate me as a potential husband? Hard to do that with chaperones hovering about." Morana couldn't help the smile that tugged at her lips. Where Valerian was intense and measured, Lucien was all charm and carefully calculated recklessness. "You're very direct, Your Highness." "Lucien, please. If we're to be family, formalities seem excessive." He poured the dark liquid, which gleamed like liquid rubies in the candlelight. "This is from our private reserves. Blood willingly given by a virgin priestess, mixed with the finest grapes from the southern valleys, aged 300 years. He offered her a glass, and she accepted it, their fingers brushing. Unlike Valerian's touch, which had sent electricity through her. Lucian's contact was like ice water, shocking in its own way, but different. To new alliances, he said, raising his glass. To understanding, she countered, raising her own. They sipped in silence for a moment. The blood wine was exquisite, complex flavors exploding on her tongue. Sweetness, iron, oak, and something else, something ancient and powerful. Your brother seems skeptical of the East's intentions, Marana finally said. Val is skeptical of everything. He's the cautious one. Lucian moved closer, his pale hair gleaming in the low light. I prefer to see opportunities rather than threats. And what opportunity do you see in me, Lucian? She met his gaze unflinchingly. His smile was slow, predatory, a fascinating woman with power, intelligence, and beauty, a potential ally. Perhaps more. He tilted his head, studying her. But the real question is what you see in us. You've been tasked with choosing, have you not? One prince to bind the East to Noctoria. Marana took another sip of wine to hide her discomfort. My mission is to secure an alliance. The particulars are flexible. But you must have a preference already. Lucien set his glass down and circled behind her, his presence a cold fire at her back. Valerian is honorable, dutiful, intense. The perfect royal consort on paper. His voice dropped to a whisper near her ear. But I suspect you crave more than duty, Lady Marana. She turned to face him, maintaining a careful distance. What I crave is irrelevant. This is about survival for both our realms. Is it? Lucien challenged. Or is Lord Draken playing a longer game? The Eastern Territories were once part of Noctoria. Perhaps he sees a path to reclaiming influence through you. Marana's eyes widened slightly. Lucien was sharper than his carefree demeanor suggested. Lord Draken seeks protection for our people, nothing more. Everyone wants something more, Marana. Lucien reached out, boldly tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Even you. Before she could respond, the door opened without a knock. Valerian stood in the doorway, his expression darkening as he took in the scene before him. Lucienne, standing intimately close to Marana, her cheeks flushed from the blood wine and the tension in the room. Brother, Lucien greeted, not stepping away. Care to join us? We're sampling the priestess vintage. It's late, Valerian said, his voice tight, and Lady Nightshade has had a long journey. She needs rest, not entertainment. I was just leaving, Lucien said smoothly, collecting his bottle but leaving his half-empty glass. Sleep well, Lady Marana. Dream of possibilities. He brushed past Valerian with a knowing smirk that made the elder twin's jaw clench visibly. When they were alone, Marana set down her glass. Your brother is persistent. Lucien has always taken what he wants, Valerian said, still standing by the door as if uncertain whether to enter or leave. And what about you, Valerian? She asked quietly. What do you want? He met her gaze, and the raw hunger in his eyes made her breath catch. What I want and what must be are rarely aligned. He seemed to be fighting some internal battle. I met your cousin in the woods tonight. Marana stiffened. Kyne approached you? What did he say? Enough to make me question whether this alliance is truly as mutual as you present it to be. Valerian finally entered the room, closing the door behind him. He spoke of human attacks, of Lord Draken's desperation. Kyne oversteps, Marana said, anger flaring, but he doesn't lie. The situation in the East is dire. Why didn't you tell me the full extent of it? Would you have believed me? She challenged. Or would you have assumed I was exaggerating to pressure you into an alliance? Valerian moved closer, his dark eyes intent on hers. I would have appreciated honesty. Honesty? Marana laughed bitterly. In diplomatic negotiations, that's rarely the currency of choice. It is with me, Valerian's voice softened. Show me, Marana. Show me what you've seen. She understood what he was asking. Among their kind, blood carried memory. Through it, vampires could share experiences, thoughts, even emotions. It was an intimate act, normally reserved for lovers or close family. You ask for much, Prince Valerian. "I ask for truth." After a long moment, Marana nodded. She moved to the bed, sitting on its edge, and gestured for him to join her. When he sat beside her, she extended her wrist. "My memories are yours to witness," she said formally. Valerian took her wrist gently, his touch sending that now familiar current through her body. He raised her wrist to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers, and then his fangs pierced her skin with exquisite precision. The sensation was unlike anything Marana had experienced before. As Valerian drank, she felt his presence in her mind, gentle, respectful, but undeniably there. Through their connection, she showed him everything. The first human attack on an outlying estate, the bodies of vampires burned beyond recognition. The council meetings where Lord Draken's advisors argued over how to respond. The second attack, more coordinated, with weapons that fired stakes from a distance. The third attack, which breached the inner territories and left an entire noble house in ashes. She showed him her own family estate, now fortified like a military encampment. Her young sister, once carefree, now jumping at shadows. Lord Draken's growing desperation as more noble houses threatened to flee to human lands, abandoning their heritage for survival. Finally, she showed him the moment when Lord Draken had summoned her, explaining her mission to Noctoria. "You are beautiful and clever," he had told her. "Make the twin princes desire you. Secure an alliance through marriage. Our survival depends on it." Valerian broke the connection abruptly, pulling away from her wrist. A drop of blood welled from the puncture marks, which he gently wiped away with his thumb. "I had no idea," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "The human attacks have not reached our borders." "Not yet," Marana said quietly. "But they will. The humans grow more organized with each passing season. They've rediscovered old techniques for hunting our kind and developed new weapons. Why haven't other vampire realms reported similar attacks?" Pride. Fear of appearing vulnerable, Marana sighed. "And perhaps because the East is being targeted first, due to our proximity to human territories." Valerian was silent for a long moment, processing everything he had seen through her blood. "This changes things," he finally said. "The Council must be informed. We need to strengthen our defenses, send scouts to the border regions." "And the Alliance?" Marana asked, hating how vulnerable she felt in that moment. Valerian looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "The alliance is necessary, but marriage should be more than political strategy. In an ideal world, perhaps," she said. "We don't live in an ideal world." "No," he agreed softly. "We don't." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Valerian reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with feather-light touch. "Your blood carries truth, Marana, but it also carries something else, something you tried to hide from me." She swallowed, knowing what he had glimpsed. "It's inappropriate. It's real." His gaze dropped to her lips. "I felt it when we danced. I taste it in your blood." "Valerian," she whispered, half warning, half plea. He leaned closer, his breath cool against her lips. "Tell me to stop." She should. Everything depended on careful negotiation, on maintaining control. She needed to evaluate both princes objectively, to make a strategic decision for her people. Getting emotionally entangled would compromise everything. Instead, she closed the distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, a cautious exploration. Then something broke loose within them both. Valerian's arms encircled her waist, pulling her against him as the kiss deepened. Marana tangled her fingers in his midnight black hair, a sound between a sigh and a moan escaping her throat. In that moment, there was no East and no Noctoria, no political machinations or ancient rivalries, just hunger and need and the intoxicating taste of each other. A sharp knock at the door jolted them apart. Before either could speak, the door swung open to reveal Kane, his expression thunderous. "My lady," he said stiffly, pointedly ignoring Valerian. "There's been an incident. You're needed immediately." Morana stood, straightening her gown with trembling hands. "What's happened?" "A message from Lord Drakon," Cain said, his eyes finally sliding to Valerian with undisguised hostility. "The humans have breached the eastern capital. Lord Drakon has fled to the mountain stronghold." The blood drained from Morana's face. "No, that's impossible. The capital's defenses were sabotaged," Cain cut in. "From within." Valerian rose to his feet. "What are you implying?" "I imply nothing, Prince," Cain said coldly. "I state facts. While you've been entertaining our emissary with bloodsharing and seduction, our homeland burns." "Cain," Morana snapped, "you forget yourself." "And you forget your mission," he retorted. "Lord Drakon needs an answer now. No more games, no more evaluation. Either Noctoria stands with the East, or we find allies elsewhere." Valerian's expression hardened. "You speak of alliance, yet throw accusations. If there was treachery in the East, look to your own council before you cast suspicion on Noctoria." "Stop, both of you," Morana commanded. She turned to Cain. "Leave us. I will meet you in my antechamber shortly." Cain hesitated, then bowed stiffly and withdrew, leaving the door pointedly open. Morana turned back to Valerian, her political mask firmly back in place, despite the lingering warmth of his kiss. "I must respond to Lord Drakon immediately. This changes everything." "Indeed it does." Valerian's voice was carefully neutral now. "The council must be convened tonight. If the humans have grown bold enough to attack the eastern capital, Noctoria must prepare. And our discussion? The alliance will be decided by the council, as all matters of state must be." His formal tone cut deeper than anger would have. Morana nodded, fighting to keep her expression composed. "Of course. Politics before everything else." Valerian stepped toward the door, then paused. "What happened between us was a moment of weakness," she finished for him. "Nothing more." Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or resignation. "As you say, Lady Nightshade." He left without another word, his straight back and measured stride revealing nothing of the passion they had shared moments before. Morana pressed her fingers to her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. Outside her window, a raven cawed sharply, once, twice, 3 times. An eastern signal. She moved to the window and opened it. The bird flew in, landed on the back of a chair, and fixed her with intelligent eyes. Tied to its leg was a tiny scroll, sealed with Lord Drakon's insignia. With trembling fingers, Morana untied the message and read the spidery script. "The capital has fallen. The traitor wears a crown. Trust no one in Noctoria. Return immediately or proceed with ultimate contingency. The survival of our kind hangs in the balance." She read the message twice more, her blood running cold. The implications were clear. Lord Drakon believed someone in the Noctorian royal court, someone with a crown, had betrayed the East to the humans. One of the twins. It seemed impossible. Yet as she recalled Lucien's calculating eyes, his probing questions about Eastern defenses, a seed of doubt took root. And what of Valerian? His kiss had seemed genuine, his shock at the news of the Eastern capital's fall sincere. But he had withdrawn so quickly behind formality when faced with crisis. Morana burned the message with a whispered word, the parchment curling to ash in her palm. The ultimate contingency, a measure so desperate Lord Drakon had mentioned it only once in absolute secrecy. A last resort that would change the vampire realms forever. She looked out at the eternal twilight of Noctoria, at the ancient castle where twin princes ruled in supposed harmony. By dawn, she would have to make her choice, trust in an alliance with a realm that might harbor a traitor, or unleash a power that could save the East but doom them all. The council chamber of Castle Abendrot hummed with urgent whispers as nobility from every corner of Noctoria gathered around the massive obsidian table. Valerian sat at one end, Lucien at the other, their customary formation during times of crisis. Between them stood Morana, her copper hair gleaming like fire in the torchlight as she delivered the news of the Eastern capital's fall. The human forces were coordinated and well-equipped, she explained, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. They breached the ancient wards with devices we've never encountered before. Machines that neutralized our magic. They struck at midnight when the council was in session. "And Lord Draken?" asked Elias Bloodworth, his ancient eyes narrowed with concern. "Escaped to our mountain stronghold with the surviving members of his court." Morana's gaze swept the chamber. "But many were lost. Noble houses that have existed since the first night, gone in hours." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Vampires had grown accustomed to their supremacy, their near immortality making them complacent. The idea that humans could pose a genuine threat was almost incomprehensible. "How did they overcome your defenses so easily?" Lucian asked, his voice cutting through the whispers. "Eastern magic is renowned for its potency." Morana met his gaze directly. "They had help. Someone with intimate knowledge of our defenses guided them." "A traitor." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Valerian raised his hand, and silence fell immediately, a demonstration of the absolute authority the twins wielded. "You believe this traitor has connections to Noctoria?" he asked, his face an impassive mask, despite the turmoil he felt within. Morana hesitated, Lord Draken's warning echoing in her mind. "The traitor wears a crown." "Lord Draken has concerns," she said carefully. "The humans knew exactly when and where to strike. Such intelligence doesn't come easily." "You suspect one of us," Lucian said bluntly, a dangerous smile playing at his lips. "How deliciously dramatic." "I voice only my lord's concerns," Morana replied, refusing to be baited. "He believes that alliance is more crucial than ever." Kane interrupted, stepping forward from his position at the chamber's edge. "The East needs Noctoria's military strength immediately, not debates about loyalties." Valerian studied the Eastern Guard's face, noting the barely contained fear beneath his aggressive stance. "An alliance requires trust, Lord Bloodmane. Your accusations make that difficult." "My cousin makes no accusations," Kane snapped, "but facts remain facts. The humans who attacked us carried weapons of Noctorian design." A shocked silence fell over the council chamber. Morana shot Kane a warning glance. This revelation was premature, potentially explosive. "Explain yourself," Valerian demanded, rising to his feet. Kane pulled a twisted piece of metal from his tunic and placed it on the obsidian table. It was the remnant of a weapon, a crossbow mechanism, but far more complex than traditional designs, with gears and chambers for multiple bolts. "This was recovered from the attack site," Kane said. "The craftsmanship is unmistakably Noctorian. Your royal seal is even stamped into the metal." Lucian rose now too, moving to examine the device. "This came from our armory," he confirmed, his voice tight with anger. "These are prototypes, experimental weapons under development by our military engineers." "Weapons you never informed me of," Valerian said, his eyes narrowing at his brother. A flicker of something, annoyance, guilt, crossed Lucien's face. "A routine military advancement, hardly worth bothering you with when you're so consumed with administrative matters." The tension between the twins was palpable, crackling like lightning in the still air of the council chamber. Morana watched them carefully, sensing the first real fracture in their unified front. "This changes nothing," Elias Bloodworth interjected smoothly. "Weapons can be stolen, royal seals forged. What matters now is our response to this human aggression." Murmurs of agreement swept through the room, but Morana noticed how several council members exchanged significant glances. Seeds of doubt had been planted. "Lord Bloodworth is right," she said. "What's done is done. The question now is what comes next. The East proposes immediate military alliance, sealed through marriage to ensure loyalty on both sides." "Marriage," Valerian repeated, his eyes finding hers briefly before shifting away. "To whom?" The moment of truth had arrived. Marana steeled herself, acutely aware of both princes watching her intently. Lord Draken has authorized me to make that decision based on my assessment of what would create the strongest alliance, she said carefully. But given the urgency of the situation, I must choose now. The council chamber grew so silent that the distant drip of water somewhere in the castle depths seemed thunderous. Valerian's face remained impassive, though his eyes burned with intensity. Lucien leaned forward slightly, his characteristic smirk replaced by genuine tension. "I choose," Marana began, but was interrupted as the massive doors to the council chamber burst open. A royal guard stumbled in, his armor spattered with blood. "Attack!" he gasped. "Humans at the western gate, dozens of them with strange weapons that burn like the sun." The chamber exploded into chaos. Nobles rose from their seats in panic, some calling for their personal guards, others demanding details. Valerian and Lucien shared a look of perfect understanding. Whatever tensions existed between them, the defense of Noctoria came first. "Secure the inner keep," Valerian commanded, his voice cutting through the panic. "All nobility to the sanctuary chambers, council members to the war room. Guards to their battle stations," Lucien added. "Activate the blood wards around the castle perimeter." The twins moved in perfect synchronization, their complementary leadership momentarily reunited by crisis. As the chamber emptied, Marana felt Cain's hand on her arm. "This is our chance," he whispered urgently. "While they're distracted with the attack, we implement the ultimate contingency." Marana pulled away from him aghast. "During an attack, when they're vulnerable?" "That's precisely why it's perfect," Cain insisted. "Lord Draken was clear. If the alliance couldn't be secured through marriage, the alternative was necessary, no matter the cost." "The alternative is monstrous," Marana hissed. "It would destroy everything." "The East is already being destroyed." Cain's eyes glowed red with emotion. "You've grown soft, cousin. Your feelings for the dark-haired prince cloud your judgment." Before she could respond, Valerian approached them, his face grim with purpose. "Lady Nightshade, your people have experience with these human weapons. We need your insights in the war room." "Of course," she said, shooting Cain a warning glance before following Valerian. The war room was a circular chamber deep within the castle, its walls covered in maps of Noctoria and surrounding territories. A crystalline orb in the center showed real-time images of the castle's perimeters, currently displaying the western gate where humans in strange armor were attempting to breach the outer walls. "Their armor deflects our magic," Lucien observed, studying the images. "Similar to what you described in the eastern attacks. The metal is infused with cold iron and blessed silver," Marana explained, pointing to the distinctive sheen of the human soldiers' breastplates. "It creates a barrier against most vampire enchantments." "How do we counter it?" Valerian asked. "Brute force works. The armor protects against magic, not physical impact." She traced a finger along the castle's outer wall on the map. "But their weapons are the real threat. They've developed something they call artificial sunlight, focused beams of light that burn our kind to ash instantly." The council members exchanged horrified glances. Sunlight was one of the few things that could kill a vampire instantly, their immortal flesh turning to dust under its direct rays. It was why Noctoria existed in perpetual twilight, protected by ancient magic that dimmed the sun's lethal glare. "How did humans develop such technology?" Elias wondered aloud. "They've been scientifically stagnant for centuries." "Not stagnant," Marana corrected. "Secret. They've been developing these weapons for decades, testing them in remote regions before launching coordinated attacks." The crystalline orb flashed as a section of the outer wall began to crumble under sustained assault. Valerian cursed under his breath. "We need to evacuate the western wing," he decided. "Lucien, take a squadron to reinforce the inner defenses. I'll lead the counterattack from the north tower." "Actually," Lucien said smoothly, "I think I should lead the counterattack. You're better at defensive strategy." A tense moment passed between them, subtle but noticed by everyone in the room. Finally, Valerian nodded. "Very well, but take Elias with you. His battle magic will be useful against their armor." As the council dispersed to implement the defensive plan, Valerian pulled Marana aside. His voice dropped to a whisper, ensuring only she could hear. "Something isn't right about this attack. It's too convenient, too precisely timed with your revelation about Eastern weapons." Marana felt a chill at his words. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know yet, but watch my brother carefully." Valerian's eyes were troubled. "And stay close to me. I can't protect you if you're with him." "I don't need protection," she replied automatically, though her heart raced at his concern. "Everyone needs protection tonight," Valerian said grimly. As they exited the war room, Marana spotted Cain waiting in the corridor, his face impassive, but his body tense like a predator ready to spring. "I need to speak with my cousin," she told Valerian. "I'll join you shortly." Valerian hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave her, but the sounds of battle were growing louder. "The Eastern Tower," he said. "Come find me there when you're done." Once he was gone, Cain stepped forward, his eyes burning. "You're wasting precious time. The ultimate contingency must be implemented now." "It's too dangerous," Marana insisted. "We don't even know if it will work." "Lord Drakon believes it will. That's enough." Cain reached into his tunic and withdrew a small vial of viscous crimson liquid, far darker than normal blood. The ancient blood of the first vampire, preserved for millennia for just such a crisis. Marana stared at the vial with a mixture of awe and horror. According to legend, consuming the blood of the first vampire, their progenitor, would grant a power boost so immense it could potentially change the course of history. But the legends also warned of madness, of transformation so complete that the drinker might lose all humanity. "This was meant as an absolute last resort," she whispered, "not a first option. Look around you." Cain gestured wildly toward the sounds of battle. "Humans are at the gates of the most powerful vampire stronghold in existence. If they take Noctoria, our kind is finished. There won't be another chance." A thunderous crash shook the castle foundations. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They've breached the west wing," Marana realized with horror. "Exactly. Now take it." Cain thrust the vial toward her. "It must be you. Your royal bloodline makes you the ideal vessel." Marana stared at the vial, temptation and fear warring within her. With that power, she could push back the human forces single-handedly. She could save the East, save Noctoria, but at what cost to herself? "I need to think," she said, taking the vial but not opening it. "This isn't a decision to make in haste." Cain looked like he wanted to argue further, but the sound of approaching footsteps silenced him. Lucian appeared around the corner, now clad in battle armor of deepest black. "Ah, our Eastern friends," he said with deceptive lightness. "Discussing strategy in dark corners while my people fight and die?" "We were just determining how best to assist," Marana replied smoothly, slipping the vial into her gown's hidden pocket. Lucian's eyes narrowed slightly. "Indeed? Then perhaps Lord Bloodmane would care to join me at the Western Front. His Eastern battle techniques would be most instructive." It was a command thinly veiled as a request. Cain glanced at Marana, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "It would be my honor, Prince Lucien," Cain said with a stiff bow. As they departed, Lucien glanced back at Marana. "My brother awaits you in the Eastern Tower. Don't keep him waiting too long. He grows impatient when worried about those he cares for." The knowing look in his eyes made it clear he understood exactly what had developed between Marana and Valerian. There was something else there too, a flicker of something that might have been jealousy, or perhaps something darker. Alone in the corridor, Marana withdrew the vial again, holding it up to the torchlight. The blood within seemed to move of its own accord, swirling hypnotically. Power radiated from it, calling to her vampire nature with promises of strength beyond imagining. She thought of Valerian waiting for her, of his kiss, of the connection they had shared when he drank from her. Could she risk losing herself to this ancient power when she had just found something worth holding on to? The castle shook again, more violently this time. The humans were advancing. Decisions had to be made. Morana ran through the castle corridors, navigating the labyrinthine passages with the unnatural speed of her kind. She passed scenes of preparation and panic, servants hurrying with weapons and supplies, guards taking up defensive positions, nobility being escorted to safe rooms deep within the mountain the castle was built upon. When she reached the eastern tower, she found Valerian directing a group of elite guards, mapping out defensive positions with quick, decisive gestures. He sensed her presence immediately, turning to meet her eyes across the room. "You came," he said simply, dismissing the guards with a nod. "Did you doubt I would?" she asked, approaching him. "These are uncertain times. Loyalties shift like shadows." His gaze was penetrating. "Have you made your decision?" The question hung between them, laden with multiple meanings. The choice of Prince for the marriage alliance, the choice of whether to trust Noctoria, and perhaps most immediately, the choice of what to do with the ancient blood now burning a hole in her pocket. "I need to know something first," Morana said. "The weapons Cain presented, the Noctorian designs used against the East. Did you know about them?" Pain flashed across Valerian's face. "No. Lutien has been overseeing military development for the past century. It was our division of duties. I handled diplomacy and internal affairs. He managed defense and innovation. Could he have provided those weapons to the humans?" The question felt like betrayal even as she asked it. Valerian's expression darkened. "A month ago, I would have said it was impossible. Now," he shook his head, "I don't know my brother anymore. Something has changed in him." The admission clearly cost him dearly. Morana stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm. "When did you first notice the change?" "Gradually over the past year. He became secretive, holding private councils I wasn't invited to. He began to question our traditional governance, suggesting that perhaps two rulers were inefficient." Valerian's voice grew quieter. "And then you arrived, and I saw a side of him I'd never witnessed before. A possessiveness, a competitiveness that went beyond our usual rivalry. The vial seemed to pulse against Morana's skin, as if responding to the tension in the air. She made her decision. "Valerian, there's something I must show you," she began, reaching for the hidden pocket. Before she could withdraw the vial, the tower door burst open. Elias Bloodworth stumbled in, his ancient face contorted with horror. "The western front has fallen," he gasped. "Prince Lucian is missing. And the humans, they're being led by a vampire." Valerian froze. "What did you say?" "A vampire leads them," Elias repeated. "A nobleman with hair white as bone." The world seemed to stop for Morana. She saw the devastation blooming across Valerian's face as the implications sank in. His twin, his other half, a traitor. It was unthinkable. Yet the evidence had been mounting since her arrival. "No," Valerian whispered. "There must be some mistake." "I saw him with my own eyes," Elias insisted. "He commands them as if they were his personal army. And Prince, he wears a crown of iron. The humans call him their Twilight King." Valerian staggered as if physically struck. Morana moved to support him, but he straightened with visible effort, his face hardening into a mask of grim determination. "Where is Cain?" Morana asked suddenly, a terrible suspicion forming. "Dead," Elias replied flatly. "Struck down by Prince Lucian himself when he questioned the prince's orders to fall back from a defensible position." The vial in Morana's pocket seemed to burn now, demanding to be used. Lord Draken's warning echoed in her mind. "The traitor wears a crown." "Valerian," she said urgently, "there's still a way to save Noctoria, but you must trust me completely." His eyes, filled with the pain of his brother's betrayal, found hers. "What do you propose?" Slowly, Morana withdrew the vial of ancient blood. "This is the blood of the first vampire, preserved by the East for millennia. It grants power beyond imagining to whoever consumes it. Enough power to defeat an army. Enough power to defeat your brother. Valerian stared at the vial, understanding dawning. The ultimate contingency Cain spoke of. Yes, Lord Drakon intended for me to use it if the alliance failed. She held the vial out to him. But I believe it should be you. His eyes widened. Me, but the risks are enormous, she acknowledged. The legends say it can drive the drinker to madness, transform them into something no longer vampire nor human. But who better to wield such power than one born to rule, one whose very nature is balance? The tower shook violently. From the windows they could see humans streaming into the castle's inner courtyard, led by a figure in white whose movements were too graceful, too fast to be human. Lucian had returned to claim his birthright, not as co-ruler, but as sole king. Valerian took the vial, his hand steady despite everything. If I do this, if I become something other, promise me one thing. Anything, Morana whispered. If I lose myself to this power, if I become a monster, his eyes held hers, intense and sorrowful, end me. Before she could respond, he uncorked the vial and drank the ancient blood in a single swallow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Valerian dropped to his knees with a cry of agony that echoed throughout the tower. His body convulsed, his back arching at an impossible angle. Black veins spread across his skin like spiderwebs, and his eyes, his beautiful dark eyes, began to glow with an unearthly crimson light. "Valerian," Morana whispered, reaching for him. His hand shot out, catching her wrist with inhuman speed and strength. When he looked up at her, his face was transforming, becoming sharper, more predatory. His fangs elongated past his lower lip, and when he spoke, his voice echoed with power that made the very stones of the castle vibrate. "I can feel him," Valerian said, his voice layered with harmonics that had not been there before. "I can feel Lucien's betrayal, his ambition, his hatred. I can feel everything." He rose to his feet, power radiating from him in visible waves of darkness. The transformation continued. His hair grew longer, streaked now with crimson to match his glowing eyes. His nails extended into claws, and the shadows in the room seemed to bend toward him, drawn to his overwhelming presence. "Valerian?" Morana asked again, uncertain if anything of the prince she had come to care for remained in this terrifying being. His transformed face softened momentarily as he looked at her. "I'm still here," he said, though his voice remained otherworldly. "But I am more now. I am what our kind was always meant to be." He moved to the window, looking down at the courtyard where Lucien led his human army toward the castle's heart. With a gesture of his hand, Valerian shattered the stone wall as if it were glass, creating an opening large enough to leap through. "Stay here," he commanded Morana. "This is between brothers now." Before she could protest, he leapt from the tower, his body transforming further as he fell. Great wings of shadow erupting from his back, carrying him toward the inevitable confrontation with his twin. Morana watched in awe and terror as Valerian descended upon the courtyard like an avenging god, the ancient blood of the first vampire having awakened something primal and devastating within him. The humans scattered in panic at the sight of him, their weapons raised, but their courage faltering. Only Lucien stood his ground, his white hair whipping in the supernatural wind that surrounded his transformed brother. On his head sat a crown of black iron, the symbol of his betrayal. "So," Lucien called out, his voice carrying clearly to the tower, "you've finally embraced your true nature, brother. A pity you won't live long enough to enjoy it." Their clash, when it came, shook the very foundations of Castle Abendroth. Morana gripped the edge of the shattered wall, watching as twin princes, one transformed by ancient blood, one corrupted by ambition, began a battle that would determine the fate of their kind. And in her heart, she knew that regardless of who won, nothing would ever be the same again. The courtyard of Castle Abendroth became an arena of primal forces as the twin princes clashed. Valerian, transformed by the ancient blood, moved with devastating speed, shadows trailing his massive wings as he circled his brother. Lucien countered with precision, his movements calculated and cold, the iron crown on his head glinting dully in the perpetual twilight. "You've become the monster our ancestors warned us about," Lucien taunted, dodging a sweeping attack from Valerian's clawed hand. "The blood madness has already taken you, and you've become something worse," Valerian replied, his voice resonating with otherworldly power. "A traitor to your own kind." Their battle escalated, magic and physical might creating shockwaves that shattered windows and crumbled ancient stone. The human soldiers attempted to assist Lucien, firing their weapons at Valerian, but the transformed prince seemed impervious to their attacks, the artificial sunlight glancing off his shadow-wreathed form without effect. From the tower, Marana watched with her heart in her throat. This was her doing. She had given Valerian the ancient blood, had transformed him into this terrifying being of immense power. Yet beneath the fearsome exterior, she had seen recognition in his eyes when he looked at her. The man she had grown to care for still existed within the monster. A decision crystallized in her mind. She could not stand idle while the fate of their kind was decided below. With vampiric grace, she leapt from the shattered wall, using the castle's ornate facade to descend swiftly to the courtyard. As she landed, she witnessed Lucien drive a blade of pure silver, deadly to their kind, into Valerian's shoulder. The transformed prince roared in pain, black blood seeping from the wound. "You always were the weaker twin," Lucien snarled, twisting the blade deeper. "Father should have recognized that I alone was fit to rule." "This was never about ruling together, was it?" Valerian growled, his clawed hand gripping Lucien's throat despite the pain. "How long have you planned this betrayal?" Lucien's face contorted with hatred. "Since the moment we were crowned. Did you think I enjoyed sharing power? Living in your shadow as you played the noble, perfect prince?" He laughed bitterly. "The humans approached me a year ago. They offered me something you never could, sole rulership. No more compromise, no more balance, just pure absolute power. At the cost of our people," Valerian hissed, his transformed features terrible with rage. "A necessary sacrifice for evolution," Lucien replied coldly. "The strongest survive. The humans understand this better than we do, clinging to our outdated traditions." A golden beam of artificial sunlight suddenly struck Valerian from behind. A human soldier had positioned one of their weapons with a clear shot. The beam burned through his shadow wings, eliciting a howl of agony. Lucien used the distraction to break free, plunging a second silver dagger into his brother's chest. "Your weakness was always your heart, brother," Lucien said, twisting the blade. "Too soft, too trusting. Even now you hesitate to kill me." Valerian stumbled, the combined effect of silver and artificial sunlight weakening him despite the ancient blood's power. In that moment, Marana made her move. She launched herself at the human soldier controlling the sunlight weapon, dispatching him with a swift, lethal strike before turning her attention to Lucien. "The Eastern emissary," Lucien remarked, his lips curling into a cruel smile as he faced her. "I should have eliminated you the moment you arrived. You've complicated everything with your distractions." "You underestimated me," Marana replied, circling him warily, "just as you underestimated your brother's love for you, a love you never deserved." Lucien attacked with lightning speed, but Marana was prepared. She had not survived as Lord Draken's emissary without combat skills of her own. They exchanged blows at supernatural velocity, Marana's defensive style contrasting with Lucien's aggressive attacks. "He told me everything," she said as they fought, deliberately provoking him. "How you secretly supplied weapons to the humans, how you orchestrated the attack on the Eastern capital to force our alliance, only to betray us all." "Clever girl," Lucien hissed, landing a blow that sent her reeling. "But not clever enough. Your precious East will fall just like Noctoria. The age of vampires is ending." "Not while I breathe," came Valerian's voice, suddenly stronger. Lucian turned to find his brother rising once more, the silver daggers pulled from his flesh, black blood sealing the wounds almost instantly. The ancient blood had granted him regenerative powers beyond anything their kind had seen before. His eyes blazed like twin crimson suns as shadows gathered around him, denser and more substantial than before. "This ends now, brother," Valerian declared. With a gesture of his clawed hand, he summoned a whirlwind of darkness that engulfed Lucian, lifting him off the ground. The white-haired prince struggled against the bonds of shadow, but they constricted tighter with each movement. "You wouldn't kill your own twin," Lucien gasped, blood trickling from his lips. "Your other half, it would destroy you." Conflict flashed across Valerian's transformed features. Despite everything, the bond between twins was sacred, ancient, and powerful. To kill Lucian would be to kill part of himself. Sensing his hesitation, Lucian summoned the last of his strength and broke free of the shadow bonds. With inhuman speed, he lunged not at Valerian, but at Marana, a final silver dagger aimed at her heart. "If I cannot rule, then you shall lose what you love most," Lucian cried. Time seemed to slow. Marana, still recovering from Lucian's earlier blow, could not move fast enough to dodge. Valerian roared, shadows exploding outward from him in a concussive wave, but the distance was too great. The dagger never reached its target. A blur of motion interposed itself between Lucien and Marana, Cain Bloodmane, bloodied but alive, his eyes glowing with desperate determination as he intercepted the blow meant for his cousin. The silver dagger sank deep into his chest instead of Marana's. "For the East," Cain whispered, blood bubbling from his lips as he collapsed. The moment of shock was all Valerian needed. With a cry that shook the very foundations of Castle Abendroth, he unleashed the full power of the ancient blood. Shadow tendrils shot from his outstretched hands, impaling Lucian through the chest and lifting him high into the air. "Brother," Lucien gasped, the arrogance finally fading from his face, replaced by fear and perhaps a glimmer of regret. "Please." Valerian's transformed face contorted with grief and rage. "You are no brother of mine." With a single, devastating gesture, he tore Lucien apart, the white-haired prince's body dissolving into ash that scattered on the wind. The iron crown clattered to the cobblestones, rolling to a stop at Valerian's feet. A terrible silence fell over the courtyard. The remaining human soldiers, witnessing their leader's destruction, dropped their weapons and fled in terror. Valerian stood motionless, his massive shadow wings spread wide, his head bowed as if the weight of what he had done threatened to crush him. Marana knelt beside Cain, cradling her cousin's body. "Why?" she whispered. "I thought you were dead." "Almost was," Cain coughed, blood staining his lips. "Lucien left me for dead. Couldn't let you face this alone." His eyes, fading rapidly, sought hers. The ultimate contingency. "Did it work?" Marana looked up at Valerian, still frozen in his grief. "Yes," she said softly, "but at what cost?" Cain's hand found hers, squeezing weakly. "Lord Draken was right. About everything. The East will survive now." His breathing grew more labored. "Tell him. I fulfilled my duty." "I will," Marana promised, tears flowing freely now. "Rest, cousin. Your battle is over." Cain's eyes closed for the final time, his body growing still in her arms. Marana gently laid him down, then rose to approach Valerian, who had not moved since destroying his brother. As she drew near, she saw that tears of black blood streaked his transformed face. "I felt him die," Valerian said, his voice hollow. "A part of me died with him." "Valerian," Marana said gently, reaching out to touch his clawed hand. "Come back to me." He looked down at her, his crimson eyes flickering with recognition. "Can I?" he asked, genuine fear in his voice. "The power. It consumes me. I feel it changing me with every moment." "Fight it," she urged. "You are stronger than the blood." Valerian closed his eyes, concentrating. The shadow wings began to retract, the claws receding slightly. His face, though still transformed, became more recognizable as the prince she had known. "Help me," he whispered. "I can't do this alone." Without hesitation, Morana extended her wrist. "My blood carries my essence," she said. "Let it anchor you to who you truly are." Valerian hesitated, then gently took her arm and bit into her wrist. As he drank, their connection reopened, more powerful than before, due to the ancient blood flowing through him. Morana gasped as she felt the enormity of his struggle, the primal power threatening to consume his identity. Through their blood connection, she poured everything she felt for him, respect, admiration, and the love she had been afraid to acknowledge even to herself. She showed him images of the future they could build together, of peace between their realms, of healing the wounds inflicted by Lucian's betrayal. Gradually, Valerian's form continued to change, not returning to human entirely, but finding a balance between the terrifying creature of shadow and the prince he had been. When he finally released her wrist, his eyes had dimmed from burning crimson to a deep garnet, his features noble once more, though marked permanently by the transformation. "I can control it now," he said, his voice still resonant with power but recognizably his own. "Because of you." Their moment was interrupted as castle guards and nobility emerged cautiously from their hiding places, surveying the devastation of the courtyard. Elias Bloodworth approached, his ancient face grave as he took in the scene. The scattered ashes that had been Lucienne, the dead and wounded, the transformed Valerian. "The castle is secure, Your Highness," Elias reported. "The human forces are retreating. What remains of the council awaits your command." Valerian straightened, conscious of the eyes upon him, of the fear his transformed appearance inspired. "Gather the wounded, secure the perimeter. We will address the full council at dawn." As Elias departed to carry out his orders, Valerian knelt and picked up the iron crown Lucienne had worn. He studied it for a long moment before crushing it in his hand, the metal crumpling like paper in his enhanced strength. "Never again will Noctoria be ruled by fear," he declared. Dawn arrived, the perpetual twilight of Noctoria brightening slightly to a deep purple hue. In the great throne room, the surviving nobility and council members gathered to hear their prince address them. The events of the night had spread throughout the castle: the human attack, Lucien's betrayal, Valerian's transformation. When Valerian entered, a hush fell over the assembly. He was still transformed, though less dramatically than during the battle. His hair remained streaked with crimson, his eyes a deep garnet, his presence more commanding than ever before. Yet he moved with the same grace and dignity that had always characterized him. "Noctoria stands at a crossroads," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast chamber. "Last night, we faced betrayal from within and enemies from without. We lost many, including my brother, whose ambition led him down a dark path." He paused, scanning the faces before him. "But in crisis, we find truth. The truth is that our isolation has made us vulnerable. The world is changing, and we must change with it or perish." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but no one dared interrupt. "Today, I forge a new path for Noctoria. We will strengthen our defenses, modernize our methods, and most critically, form new alliances." He turned to Morana, who stood at his side. "Beginning with the Eastern Territories." Morana stepped forward, her posture regal despite her exhaustion. "The East accepts this alliance with gratitude and pledges full support against the human threat. Together, our realms will be stronger than either could be alone. This alliance," Valerian continued, "will be sealed in the traditional manner, through marriage." He extended his hand, and Morana took it without hesitation. "Lady Morana Nightshade has consented to become my queen, uniting our bloodlines and our territories." The announcement was met with a mixture of reactions: relief, approval, and some clear apprehension. Elias Bloodworth stepped forward, his ancient eyes assessing Valerian carefully. "Your Highness," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "while the Council welcomes this alliance, we must address the matter of your transformation. The ancient blood has changed you in ways we do not fully understand." "Indeed it has," Valerian agreed candidly. I am not the prince I was yesterday. The blood of the first vampire flows through me now, granting powers our kind has not possessed for millennia. His gaze swept the room, unflinching. I could rule through fear, as my brother attempted to do. Instead, I choose to rule through wisdom, with the council's guidance and the support of my queen. To demonstrate his control, Valerian allowed shadows to gather around his form, then dispersed them with a gesture. I am master of this power, not its servant, and I will use it to protect our kind in the coming war. For war is upon us, make no mistake. The humans will return, better prepared and more numerous. What of succession? Asked a noblewoman from House Corvus. The dual rule of twins has been our tradition for 7 centuries. Without Prince Lucien, some traditions must evolve, Valerian replied. My children with Queen Marana will inherit a unified throne, strengthened by Eastern blood and Eastern magic. His expression softened slightly. But governance will remain balanced, through counsel, through law, and through the wisdom of my queen, whose perspective will complement my own. The council members exchanged glances, then Elias stepped forward again. The council recognizes Valerian as sole sovereign of Noctoria and accepts Lady Marana Nightshade as his queen and co-ruler. He knelt, and the rest of the assembly followed suit. Long live King Valerian! Long live Queen Marana! 3 nights later, as the full moon cast silver light through the perpetual twilight of Noctoria, Valerian stood on the balcony where he had last spoken with Marana before the battle. The castle still bore the scars of conflict, but repairs had begun, and the first eastern reinforcements had arrived that evening, the vanguard of a united vampire army. He sensed Marana's presence before she spoke, his enhanced senses allowing him to recognize her unique essence. The scouts report no human activity along the western border, she said, joining him at the balcony's edge. But Lord Draken's messengers confirm increased movements in the human territories. They're regrouping. As expected, Valerian nodded. We have time to prepare, at least. Marana studied his profile, still adjusting to the changes in him. The ancient blood had settled into a permanent transformation, not the terrifying creature of battle, but not the Valerian of before either. He existed now as something new, something powerful, yet controlled. Any regrets? She asked quietly. Valerian turned to her, his garnet eyes softening. About us? Never. About Lucien, she clarified gently. About what you had to do. Pain flickered across his features. I will always mourn the brother I thought I had, he admitted. But his betrayal began long before that final battle. Perhaps I never truly knew him at all. Marana took his hand, her touch grounding him as it always did now. The blood bond we share. I feel your grief. It's part of you, but it doesn't define you. No, he agreed, drawing her closer. You define me now. Your strength, your courage, your heart. Without you, the ancient blood would have consumed me entirely. I think you underestimate yourself, she smiled. But I'm grateful to be your anchor. The moon cast their joined shadows across the balcony floor, his elongated and tinged with darkness, hers slender and graceful beside it. Together, they created a new silhouette, neither Eastern nor Noctorian, but something uniquely their own. Tomorrow we begin planning for war, Valerian said, his gaze turning to the distant horizon where human lands lay. But tonight, he pulled her gently into his arms. Tonight belongs to us. Their kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the future they would forge together. As king and queen of a united vampire realm, they faced immense challenges, a human enemy growing in strength, a populace still reeling from betrayal, and the unknown long-term effects of the ancient blood. Yet in this moment, beneath the eternal twilight of their kingdom, none of that mattered. They had found in each other the perfect balance, her diplomatic wisdom complementing his transformed power, her Eastern heritage bringing new strength to Noctorian traditions. Where once twin princes had ruled through their complementary natures, now a king and queen would lead through love, sacrifice, and shared purpose. And as the castle slept around them, healing from the wounds of battle, Valerian and Morana sealed their bond with whispered promises beneath the watching moon, promises of loyalty, of passion, of a future rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. A future where vampires would not merely survive, but thrive, evolving to meet the challenges of a changing world. Together, they would write a new chapter in the ancient history of their kind, a chapter of unity, of transformation, and of love that transcended politics and power. A chapter written in blood, but illuminated by hope.